So a while back, I was talking to my sister about writing. She wanted a few tips and pointers into making her story a little bit better, having that little extra flair that makes it just feel so much better. So I got to thinking about all that YouTube that I'd watched, and the solution suddenly hit it in my brain. I'm not sure where it had come from, but then I just said to her, I think you need a narrative, a driving idea from the beginning of the story all the way to the end. What is the one thing that you want to show everybody in the world? What is the one thing from your heart that you want to say to these people and let them know? Boom, narrative. And that was my advice to her. But then that got me wondering, how do exactly narratives work? So I brainstormed for about 4 days, and I think I finally have a good idea on how narratives are supposed to be implemented into stories. But a quick disclaimer before we start, these are observations that I have come across, and I didn't really talk to anybody else about this, so it may be just echo chambers in my own head. Or I could be exactly spot on and objectively right. Who knows? Okay, to start off, let's define what a narrative is. Like I said before, I think it is a driving idea that starts at the beginning of the series and ends at some other point. Doesn't necessarily have to be at the end. You can have multiple narratives throughout different arcs, but it has to be at the beginning of an arc and ends at the end of an arc. But I'm going too fast. Let's stick with simple definitions. A narrative is a driving idea that starts at the beginning of an arc and ends at the end of an arc. It can be for any character at any point in a series, or movie, or TV show, or anything. That leads us to this next question though. How are narratives implemented into said work? How do they fit into the story? Or rather, what methods are used to convey narratives? But that's actually kind of a trick question because narratives are kind of supported by literally every element of the story. They're the idea, basically the baseline that drives the entire story forward. So therefore, the methods that they use are going to be in literally every part. Don't believe me? Well, you can actually convey narratives through setting. Case in point, Ratatouille. And if you don't know what Ratatouille is, I'll sum it up for you real quick. A rat named Remy wants to cook, but he can't because he is a rat and his father's a judgmental dingbat. Fast forward to Remy screwing up, getting the colony banished, and they all end up in Paris where Remy has the ability to cook at a 4-star restaurant. 3-star restaurant. Wouldn't want to leave out that detail. The narrative of Ratatouille is talent can come from anywhere, and judging somebody's talent based on their appearance is foolish. I just realized that this movie is incredibly PC. Oof. And this narrative is helped by the setting that Remy, the main character, is a rat. Because of the setting, that is easier for them to convey their points more effectively, i.e. tell the incels that they can actually get married. And if you don't think that's enough evidence, well then I have another example for you. Zootopia. And if you haven't seen Zootopia here, let me sum it up for you real quick. Also, spoilers for Zootopia. Some dumb bunny decides that she wants to become a cop because of some sort of traumatic event that happened in her past, and now she wants to become a cop, so she moves to the big city, and then she walks into this guy called Nick Wilde, and then they become friends, and then they work together, and then they become... Oh, this is irrelevant, because that's not the narrative thing that I'm trying to pull from the setting. It's because several of them are predators and prey, and some of them conflict with each other. Why am I still talking really fast? I don't want to stop. Talk about unnecessary fast speech. So the part in Zootopia that helps the narrative is the part where there are prey and then there are predators. This helps contribute to the idea that you should not judge people based on their appearance. Wait, wasn't that the same as Ratatouille? Anyway, the setting is helping the narrative. Notice the word helping. It doesn't actually convey the narrative, it guides the narrative. The narrative is conveyed via the plot. For instance, the 3rd episode of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. You see, in this episode, this chick right here, Rose, has been hook, line, and sinkered into believing this false religion of a cult, and is absolutely convinced that this pastor guy right here can revive her dead boyfriend. Then along comes this pipsqueak and he ruins it for her. Nice going, Ed! But all jokes aside, this was a pretty heart-wrenching thing and done really well. What was I going on about? Oh yeah, narratives. This entire plotline here conveys the narrative that you shouldn't just take things blindly. You should look at it for yourself, and that you shouldn't cling to things. At least that's what I got out of it. It's up for interpretation, but it is displayed well, and that's the example here. And just know that these are general examples, and they're not like 100% solid, this is the way that everything else is gonna work. Every work differs in its own way. And I should note that narratives work slightly different between different forms of media. Like, movies will generally have like one long-lasting narrative that lasts throughout the entire story, whereas TV shows will have narratives spread throughout each arc. Books and video games tend to have the same narrative structure as movies do, and comic books seem to have the same structure as TV shows. Yes, this does double for anime and manga, you weeb. Narrative complexity usually coincides with the amount of screen time that they are given to show said production. That's why movies generally only have one narrative. But all of this begs one final question. Why do we need a narrative? Honestly, narratives are practically unavoidable. So, needing a narrative is not necessarily the right kind of question. Narratives are a byproduct of certain events taking place and a consensus being formed throughout the viewer's mind. So the real question is, why do we need to control our narrative? Because if we have complete control over our narratives, we will have complete control over the messages that we send to people. And when you're in control, you tend to not make mistakes. None of us want to make those kind of blunders, especially when it comes to the core message throughout our story. So to summarize, all you have to do is have a consistent idea of what you want to say, and put good writing alongside of it. Narrative construction isn't hard, you just have to keep it in the back of your mind at all times. And if you have good writing, it'll absolutely shine through. And like I said, it can be helped by setting, though I'm beginning to feel now as though setting more or less dictates narrative rather than the other way around. You just need to find a good narrative for your setting rather than a good setting for your narrative. Because I'm gonna be honest, when you're writing a story, the first thing that you think of is the setting. At least that's how it works for me.
But you're not a real writer.
Shut up! And as a final thought, I'd like to say that narratives can be either very much on the nose or they can be rather subtle. All depends on the kind of story that you're trying to tell. Each circumstance will benefit from either one. It's your call to make if you're writing something. And with that, I think I've said my piece on narratives. If you like the video, hit the like button, and if you like my content, subscribe. Man, coffee makes me tired. Oh yeah, you can also share the video if you think other people will like it. That'd help me out. Anywho, fliss out.